Hey everyone, so today we are going to talk about Unit 7, Day 8, which is basically uh, continuing with quadratic word problems, okay? So before we get into the word problems, let's talk about some of those key features that, you know, we need to remember or remind ourselves about, okay? So the first thing is the roots, okay? Roots are basically the zeros or the x-intercepts. It's where the parabola crosses the x-axis. Typically, when you're dealing with word problems, uh, they will ask for the roots by saying something along the lines of how long will the rocket take before it hits the ground, or how long will the item take before it hits the ground, hits the water, okay? The next thing we need to remember about is the vertex. Okay, remember the vertex is the highest or the lowest point of the parabola. And the vertex is just a point which has an x and a y value. And the vertex is made up of two parts, okay? The x value is the axis of symmetry. And typically they'll ask you about the axis of symmetry some along the lines of how long does the rocket take to reach its max height. So typically for the axis of symmetry, it will be about time. How long does it take for the item to reach the maximum height, to reach its maximum value, okay? And then the y value of the vertex is known as either the max value or the min value. And typically they'll say something along the lines of what is the max height of the rocket? What is the max height of this item? Okay. And then of course you have your y-intercept, which is where the parabola crosses the y-axis. Okay. So let's start off with question number one. Let's see. So first thing is, if you remember the standard form of a quadratic equation or a quadratic function is y equals 8x squared plus bx plus c. The letter c is the y-intercept, and we can call that the constant term. Okay, the bx is known as the velocity, and we typically call that the linear term. And then the ax squared is known as whatever it determines whether the parabola is going to open up or open down. Okay, and we can identify that as the quadratic term. These terms really don't mean a big deal. Okay, it's just more terminology. The important part is that you understand that the a can tell you which direction the parabola is going to open in. B is the velocity, and the letter C tells you the y-intercept. Okay, so number one, we are going to start off by working it out using Desmos. Okay, so a firework is shot upwards so that it follows the equation, where y is the height of the firework and x is time in seconds. So, question A, how long will it take for the fire rocket to reach its highest point? Okay, so first thing you need to remember is we're dealing with the highest point that's known as the vertex. Okay, and that typically, or I mean, it always is a point. And typically, the x can be represented by time, and the y is the height. Okay, and that's how the vertex typically will be described as in these situations. Okay. So let's start with question A. They said how long will it take before it reaches its highest point? How long typically deals with time. Okay, so they're asking me for the x value of the vertex. Okay, and we know that the x value is the axis of symmetry. And because we're using decimals, I'm not going to take the time to try and do negative b over 2a, okay? Which, I mean, it doesn't take that long. So go ahead and take your computer, open up another tab, get your phone or get your tablet and go to decimals.com and type in your quadratic equation, which is negative 16x squared plus 80x plus 3. Okay. And if you notice, I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit so I can be able to see the big picture. And there we go. Now I'm going to click my vertex, which is all the way up here. And my vertex is my vertex is 2.5 and 103. And if we go back to question A, it's asking me to find the x value of the vertex because that's going to tell me the time. So 2.5 is how long it took the rocket or the firework to reach its highest point. So 2.5 seconds. Okay. Question B, it's asking how high does the firework climb before it starts to descend. So in other words, they're asking me what's the maximum height, okay? Because they're saying how high. How high typically means height, okay? And if we're looking for the height of the max, okay, we are looking for the y value of the vertex. So if we go back to our graph, you will notice that the y value of the vertex is 103. Okay. I'm just going to say 103 units because the word problem didn't give us the units it's going by. We're not sure if it's going by inches, feet, meters, miles. So I'm just going to say that the firework reached a maximum height of 103 units. Okay. Question C. How many seconds will it take for the firework to hit the ground? Once again, the keywords are hit the ground. That typically reminds me of roots because roots are underground. And so if we're looking for the roots, we're looking for the x-intercepts. Okay? So all I have to do is go back to my graph and I need to find the x-intercepts on this parabola. And there they are. I'm going to click both of them. Clearly, we are dealing with time for the x value. So that means I will only use the one that is positive. Okay? So I'm just going to round 5.037 to just 5. So it's going to take about 5 seconds for this firework to hit the ground. Okay? Let's move on to number 1 under SchoolNet problems. Okay. Ryan jumped off a diving board and into the water below. His height above the water surface is modeled by the function h of t, where t represents the time in seconds after he jumped. Which answer choice shows the correct factorization of the equation and how long will it take for Ryan to reach the water? So the first thing they're asking me to find, or the first thing they're asking me to do is to factor this function, okay? So my equation is negative 16t squared plus at plus 24. So my GCF is negative 6 or negative 8, and if you look at your answer choices, that will be a safe bet. So I'm going to take out negative 8. So negative 16t squared divided by negative 8 is 2x squared. I'm going to go ahead and change the t's to an x because having t's confuses me. At divided by negative 8 will give me a negative 1x. And then 24 divided by negative 8 is negative 3. If you notice, my leading coefficient is bigger than 1, okay? So I'm going to take the 2 and throw it to the back by multiplying. And so I'm left with negative 8 times x squared minus 1x minus 6. And now that my leading coefficient is is exactly 1, I can do the t-chart. So factors of negative 6 that add up to negative 1. And I believe that should be negative 3, 2, because negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. And if you add these two numbers, you get negative 1. So my factor form is negative 8 times x minus 3 times x plus 2. Okay? So based on the factor form, I know that my answers have to be either, let's see, oop, I almost forgot something. Look at that. I'm glad I caught myself. I have to divide by -8. Or, I mean, +2. Oops. Okay. Because remember, if you throw the 2 to the back, you have to bring it back. And so you have to divide by 2. I almost made a mistake. That was close. So, -3 divided by 2 is already simplified. So I can throw that to the front of the x. So we're left with 2x minus 3. And then 2 divided by 2 is just 1. So x plus 1. And then bring down your -8. Now I am done with the factoring part. So I know I can eliminate answer choice B and answer choice D. The other two match perfectly with my factor form. So now I have to identify if the root is 1 second or 1.5 seconds. And because it's saying how long will it take before Ryan reached the water, they're asking you for the roots. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my factor form and finish working it out over here. Okay, so -8 times 2x minus 3 times x plus 1. Okay, and because we're looking for the zeros, we're going to make it equal to 0. Do my zipper, and -8 equals 0 doesn't work, so that goes away. And 2/3 or 2x minus 3 equals 0. If we jailbreak the 3, it becomes a plus 3. So we're left with 2x equals 3. And then if we divide by 2, we get x equals 3/2. Okay. And then, of course, over here we have x plus 1. If we jailbreak that, we get x equals -1. Clearly, the only positive value we have, or the positive 0 that we have, is 3/2, which is the same thing as 1.5. So, based on my factor form and one of the zeros, we know that the answer has to be C. Okay? Let's go ahead and move on to the next page. Number 2, we are not going to do. We're going to go ahead and do number 3. Okay? A ball was kicked straight up into the air from at a velocity of 80 feet per second. The function h of t models the height of the ball t seconds after it was kicked. For how many seconds is the ball descending? So we know that my graph might look something like this, because if it's going up and then down, it's going to look something like that, okay? So they're wondering for how long was it going down, okay? So we know this is the highest point, and after this turning point is going to be falling back to the ground. So they want to know how long is that, okay? So they want to know from this point to this point, what is the amount of time? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Desmos for this one. I'm just going to use Desmos instead of trying to work it out. And let's type that equation in there. So -16x squared plus 80x, okay? And I need to figure out the axis of symmetry, which is 2.5, okay? That will tell me this value right here. So this is 2.5. And now I'm going to find the x-intercept, okay, or the other root, which is down here. Where is it? Up right there, which is 5. So based on those measurements, for how long was the ball descending? From 2.5 to 5 seconds, it's about 2.5 seconds. Okay? So my answer will be B. Okay? If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Okay? You can email me, use the Remind app, or just text me, and you can find that number on the document that I posted on Google Classroom. Okay?